The next principle states that there must be a feeling of trust and support towards the team to complete the project's objectives. The next principle emphasizes on face-to-face conversations with the development team. The face-to-face conversation helps in both solving problems and easy knowledge sharing. Then the ninth principle emphasizes on finding solutions and maximizing the amount of work done with simplicity. This ensures timely completion of tasks by all the team members. The last principle states that Scrum tools like Monday.com or Zoho Sprints must be used to simplify the complicated codes, which further helps in saving time. We shall now see the steps in Agile project management. The goal of Agile methodology is to produce shorter development life cycles and more frequent product releases than traditional waterfall project management. So we will now check 6 steps in Agile project methodology. The first step in the process is project planning. Project planning includes feasibility study, development of scope, breaking the project into executable tasks or sprints, and then estimating the amount of time needed to complete those sprints. The second step is the step of roadmap creation. A roadmap is a plan of action that shows how a project shall evolve over time. A list of all the features that the final product should have is created, and the steps to achieve those features are taken. The next important step is release planning. Since we are doing the project keeping in mind the Agile project methodology, the project will complete in sprints. That means there will be the release of features at the end of each cycle. And unlike the traditional waterfall model, the development cycles will be smaller. The fourth step in Agile project management is sprint planning. The sprints are made keeping in mind what all is to be accomplished in that particular step. At the beginning of each sprint, the goal of that sprint is decided and steps to achieve that goal are taken. The next step in the process emphasizes on daily meetings. There are short meetings every day to discuss if the team was able to finish the task for each sprint and check if there are any amendments that are required. Each team member talks about what they achieved in the last sprint and what are they going to work on in the next sprint. The last step is the step of sprint review and retrospective. There are 2 meetings after each sprint. First meeting is for the sprint review. This meeting is with the stakeholders to show them the finished product. This helps both sides to build a relationship and discuss if there are any issues in the end product. The second meeting is for having a sprint retrospective. This meeting involves the stakeholders to discuss what went well and what went wrong during the sprint. Sprint retrospective takes place after the sprint review and before the next sprint planning. Now when we know the steps needed for Agile project methodology, we must understand some Agile project management frameworks. There are several frameworks available today. Here, we will be discussing some of the most popular frameworks. The first framework we will discuss is the Kanban framework. Kanban framework is a well-known framework for implementing Agile software development. In the case of Kanban framework, work items are represented on the Kanban board, which helps all the team members to see the state of every piece of work at any time. Kanban board not only helps in visualizing the work, but also optimizing the workflow among the team. The next framework we will discuss today is the Scrum framework. Scrum framework is a popular framework for managing complex knowledge work like in the field of research and advanced technologies. Scrum is a simple framework that helps teams work together and learn through their experiences gained while working on a problem. The third framework we will see today is the hybrid framework. The hybrid framework is a combination of Agile methodology and non-Agile methodology. In the case of a hybrid framework, planning is done using the traditional way of project management, while the execution and delivery is done using the Agile methodology. Since the hybrid is a combination of the two, it handles the requirement changes and delivers the product in different stages. The fourth and the last framework we will see is the Lean framework. The Lean framework works on the principle of providing maximum customer value and creating zero waste. It focuses on optimizing the flow of products all through the value stream. This helps in eliminating waste all through the process and create processes that requires less human efforts. This also simplifies the process of information management and makes it more accurate. Finally, let's have a look at some companies that have opted for Agile project management. Today, around 22% of the organizations worldwide have all their teams working on the principle of Agile project methodology. Let's have a look at some of the most prominent companies in the world that use Agile project management. In the list, we have IBM, Cisco, AT&T, Microsoft, Philips, and Samsung.
So as part of this tutorial, we are going to look at What are user stories? Advantages of user stories, investing in user stories, how to write user stories, 3 C's of user stories, life cycle of user stories, then user story map and its advantages. Now let us look at a typical scenario of an organization where the need of user stories would come in. So looking at this scenario, say an organization would have a scenario where the existing products are sold very well in the market, and they may think about introducing new product, or they may think about introducing a new feature or functionality to the existing product. So the scenario what we are considering is, it says our previous product sold really well in the market. Now let's think about new products. So we'll need to make sure we can understand the requirements and fulfill the requirements. Now, how do you do this? So how are you going to understand the consumer requirements, user requirements, and how is that going to help the user to accomplish the requirement and fulfill the need, whatever it's required to be fulfilled? So user story helps. One who understands the user stories would look at the perspective of the users, and these user stories provides those insight towards what user would exist. So as we go through, we will understand in the perspective of the users, the requirements, and how user stories helps in terms of fulfilling those requirements. This requires certain amount of visualization. Let us see what it is. So what are user stories? User stories are an agile software development project management tool that provides users with simple natural language explanations of one or more features written from the end user's perspectives. So for a given product, we may have many end users. So we may develop an application within an organization and use that application for an organization. That is one scenario. Second scenario is we create a product, we sell it, and employees of our customer organization will become users of those products. These are the two scenarios. So having these scenarios, what kind of product it is, what is the objective of this product which is going to fulfill? So let me assume an HR application which is used for submission of claims from the employees. So what is that requirement? So this application should accept the claims submission from the employees of the organization, and then that needs to be processed and the claims needs to be cleared. Now what will happen now? The user community, if you visualize, there is an user as an employee of an organization who submit claims. So there is an user in the finance perspective who is going to deposit the money. Similarly, there is an user who is going to approve. So many such user interfaces, we will see the existence of the roles of users, we will see who would be using these particular applications. So in their perspective, there should be an interface provided, there should be some privileges provided through which they would do their transactions and activities. When we write the user stories, we don't write them in detail. So a user story doesn't go in detail, it just mentions how a certain type of work will bring value to end user. So what is this role specific end user would be doing at that particular role in this particular product? What is the transactions involved? So the end user in this case could mean external end user or even internal customer or colleagues within the organization. So looking at these points, if I look at the same application, HR claim processing application, who are these internal users? The employees of organization. So who are these external? Maybe the people who sold this particular application to our organization. So they have installed their perspective, which is very important. So user story should explain this in very brief so that it helps in terms of visualizing what kind of interface has to be provided and why would this particular role use it. That is very important. So user stories also form the building block of agile frameworks like epics and initiatives. So what is this epics? What is this initiatives? Let us look at it. Now epics refers to the group of user stories where the large amount of work broken down into user stories. So many user stories together forms epics, which will provide certain insight towards how these user stories are connected with each other. So similarly, initiative refers to combination of multiple epics forming that initiatives. So which is very essential to group. So managing perspective, it will become easy. And also looking at the objective, what is that particular group of user stories, group of epics are going to accomplish. So user stories can also help ensuring that team work to goals of the organization through epics and initiatives. It should be looking at that objective exactly. What is the directions we are getting into and how these combination of user stories. So as an employee, I'm submitting my claims. So what is that required in that user's perspective? There should be a story. So I, as a finance person, I'm going to clear these claims. I'm going to pay the money, deposit the money. So that particular role needs certain interfaces, and that visualization requires how this interactions happens. So user stories should help in terms of understanding those. So the requirements for making a user story a reality are added later after discussing with the team. So we made a user story, we created a user story. It doesn't end there. So there needs to be a discussion which happens further to decide, yes, it is a valid user story. So this will also helps in terms of prioritization, which needs to be taken up first. So user stories are recorded on post-it, notes, or an index card or a project management software. And this would help in terms of prioritization or for tracking as well. So what is the advantages of user stories? So advantages of user story involves it helps in delivering high quality content because what is required to be accomplished in the user perspective, that will be very clear. Eases collaboration with team members because finalization on the user stories and understanding of the user requirements would happen after discussing with the team members. Each one would give their own viewpoints and prioritization of particular user story or keeping a specific user story or not considering that user story would be based on the feedback which team provides. This cannot happen in terms of having team members together and speaking about it. Helps understanding users better. So user roles are discussed, users requirement is discussed, and what is that they're going to accomplish through this user interface, that is also discussed. So user role is understood, user requirement is clearly understood by writing an user story. This will also help in improving transparency because since the collaboration is happening, since the user story is not just taken just like that, the discussion happens and that will have an interaction and collaboration. So definitely improves transparency. So now it reduces risks. So when I say risk, it's obviously uncertainty. So it reduces risk because the clarity one would have about the requirement of users. So accordingly, the features functionality of the product are defined so that they can fulfill those user requirements. Then supports iterative developments. As I mentioned earlier, the collaboration, the transparency, everyone working together, and in the agile perspective, user stories, epics, and initiatives gets into the specific iterations only after this discussion with the team members and after prioritizing it. So the user story will be there in the product backlogs, which will be prioritized based on that particular scenario of requirement in agile scenario. So as when we say agile, it's quite obvious. We need to be flexible to the changing scenarios. So since we're working together and when we go for an iterative mode of approach, it is quite obvious we're going for it to get adopting to the changing scenario so that we can select that particular features functionality by pulling that particular epic or user story as a priority in the given list. So that prioritization making will also become easier. Focuses on vocal communications means lot of interactions happens while discussing on user stories. So since people are doing it vocally, so there is some personal touch also established. Good collaboration can get established. So user story also provides that visibility because of that people working together in a collaborative manner. Invest in user stories. So what is invest? So investing in user stories. So what does that mean? So it is a concept that helps creating meaningful user stories. So it stands for independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, sized appropriately, testable. So when I say independent, so whenever we write the user story, that should be self-contained, if at all possible, to avoid dependencies on other user stories. So it should be independent of one another so that each of them can be developed and delivered separately. So negotiable, so when we say negotiable, user stories can always be changed or rewritten. So at any given point in time, so we should be able to do that modifications required. So that should support the flexibility associated with the agile methodologies. So since requirements often evolve, changes, and these changes comes for various different reasons. So how do we change these user stories or modify this so that it can fit into the requirement, so that adaptation can happen to the changing requirements? So stories should be discussable and should be open for negotiation for any change scenarios. So next, valuable. When I say valuable, it's quite obvious. We're speaking about value, what is being created for the users or consumers. So a user story would represent the goal or an objective an end user who is going to look for. Means value is always in the consumer's perspective. So now I created certain features, functionalities, fine, but did that really create the value to the consumers? So the value realization plays an important role. So stories must ensure there is a value being added to the consumers and customers or users always. Otherwise, user story doesn't make any sense. So estimable. So when we say estimable, one should always be able to estimate the size of the user story. So sometimes developers may not have the experience required to size the particular situations or needed for a user story. Reasons may be anything. It may be not having specific insight towards it or don't know how to estimate. There may be someone specific who needs to understand that scenarios and then come and discuss. Reasons may be anything. So stories, if you cannot estimate, then it will become difficult in terms of handling it better. So it should give some visualization. So it should be estimable and can be divided into tasks. So now small means sized appropriately. So user story should not be very big or should not be too small. And then how do we decide on this size? So now when we say any user story that can be completed by a developer in single iterations, then can we call it as too big? Quite obviously that is again indicative. So user story should be subdivided into two or more small stories into multiple pieces, multiple stories, small stories so that it can be handled better. So story should not be too big and should be completed within 40 hours or 3 to 4 days. These numbers are indicative. So not necessarily you should be fixing with this number. So just an indicative to show you that what would be the focus. When I say user story, in what is that effort it would take to accomplish that. Now testable. So when we say user story is testable, one has to ensure that development is complete and has been done correctly. So means once you create a user story, so that needs to be articulated in such a way so that it becomes measurable. When I say testable, obviously there should be metrics, a target metrics which can be created, which will help me to state, yes, this particular requirement is accomplished. So they should have an acceptance criteria that can be tested to check if they fulfill the customer's need. So then how to write user story? This is very important point to look at. So how to write the user story? So writing user stories comes up with a specific template with a simple language. So what is it? So now as a role, I want to so you keep filling it. So typically role means what? The specific user role who would be using that particular product and their requirements which are being fulfilled. So that is the role. The name of the role we are going to put it here. So the role refers to an individual that would be interfacing or interacting with the system. Now want to, when we say want to, the want or action which represents the behavior of the systems. So what is that it's supposed to do? This action would be unique to each user stories. Now so that this refers to the benefits or results that non-functional and external to the system. As a result, what would happen? What is that we are trying to accomplish out of it? So let us look at an example. How does it look like? As a CEO, I want to track my subordinates' progress to ensure organization's goals are met. Similarly, if we take the reference to those examples what we discussed earlier, like we took the example of HR portal, so claim processing requirement. Now this can be same user story. As an employee of an organization, what can I write? So as an employee of this organization, I want to submit my claims online so that claim processing will become smoother, easier, faster without any errors. So that can also be a user story. So it gives certain visualization. What kind of users are there and what is that they need. So the moment you write the user stories, you should visualize that role. It is very important. So there is 3 C's of user stories, which we call it as card, then conversation, and then confirmation. So when we say card provides a written description of the user story. So what do I mean by written description of the user story? So same thing, the user story what we just saw as an example. So that can be written on a card. So this will help in planning and estimating. So what, and that will also gives that visualization of users and their requirement, so that that can be articulated further and also estimated, so that it can looked in the perspective of invest. What is invest? What we discussed. So it is independent, it is negotiable, it is valuable, it is estimable, it is sized appropriately, means it's not, should not be too big, too small. The examples what we saw was appropriate and testable. So now when we see this particular user story, is it fulfilling all those points what we discussed in invest? That is very important. Now this card, whatever the description is provided, should elaborate on that very clearly. So then further what happens? Conversation. After the user story is written in a card and given, and it is shared with every individuals who is participating in that conversation, so then there will be discussion. So conversation represents discussion between users, team, product owners. So this helps in terms of whatever the user story is written, is it making sense? Is it in line with the user's expectation? And at the same time, whatever the understanding we have, maybe as a product owner or the team member, a developer, is my understanding correct? Then user perspective, so whatever the user story is written, is that user story is speaking about the requirement which needs to be fulfilled as they require. So this helps to build a shared understanding between all those individuals, so that there is no confusion further. So once people converse together, once the stakeholders converse together, then you will confirmation. So this represents the condition that need to be satisfied to ensure that the story meets all requirements. So you are confirming. So all the stakeholders are agreeing to that. So firstly, to summarize this, 3Cs refers to card, conversation, confirmation. Card provides the user stories which actually represents, as we took an example, so which will capture that, so that it also fulfills the thought of invest. Then conversation is required to understand what is this user story speaking about. Is that a real requirement? So confirmation further in terms of confirmation from users as well as all the stakeholders before you go and develop or execute that. So what is life cycle of user story? So when we say life cycle, so we may require to understand a life cycle starts when you conceptualize, when you visualize, when you say this is what we may require to accomplish. So there should be conceiving, someone should conceive that idea. So it may be related to a problem, it may be related to a specific product for an opportunity what is seen. So whatsoever the reason it is, there is a scenario where something is conceived. Trigger may be a problem, trigger may be some issues what is being faced, trigger may be an opportunity what is seen. So then the initiative, the trigger which actually push towards creation of the requirements and user stories. So the life cycle of user stories starts from there. So how does it go? So it involves right from the point pending to do, then discussion, then developing, confirming, and then finished. So when I say pending, I'm basically saying user stories in their most basic forms, where they are created after communicating with the user and the project team. These acts as the reminder for further discussion. So first level of understanding on user stories in the basic form. So which will help in terms of further discussion and taking a call on that. So will there be a possibility that this user stories will be modified as we progress? Answer is yes and no, both. So it may be modified, but discussion is further which goes on from this basic understanding of that particular user story. So further discussion is to elaborate on that, make sense out of it and confirm. So then after discussion with the stakeholders, users stories that need to be addressed are decided and put into sprints. So in between the point where we said pending to do. So in between this, there is a lot of discussion. So where decision is happening here. So decided and put into sprints means there is a prioritization also which is happening. So now discussion. At this stage, users confirms the requirement and acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria helps in terms of once you test that particular user story after executing, you will check based on these acceptance criteria so that you can conclude the requirement is fulfilled. The end users are shown a preview of upcoming features so that they understand, yes, this is what we were expecting. They can provide their feedbacks, necessary feedbacks or insights, whatever is required to be provided. So then, once the discussion is complete, the team would be able to design and implement features to fulfill user requirements. So once user concludes, yes, this is what we were expecting, and there is a sign off during the discussion, then features are developed and implemented so that it can goes to that product which can be used. So then after developing, confirming. So the end user confirms the user story, features are confirmed to testing environments, alpha versions and acceptance criteria are looked at before saying yes, it is confirmed, user is accepting. So that will happen as part of confirming, means that features or functionality what was written in user story, so that specific users are using it and concluding or acknowledging, yes, this is fulfilling our requirement and this is according to the acceptance criteria what we discussed and agreed. So that is very important. So we write a user story, fine, but users are not agreeing to it. That is not a good scenario to be with. User should accept and confirm, then finished. So the user story is completed at this stage. For new requirements or new features, a new user story must be created. Any new features or new functionality I am required to add to this particular product, then I would write another user story and the same life cycle starts, continues. And this is not an ending thing. So as I keep modifying the features, as I add new features, as I look at improving the performances, so I keep writing the user stories. Now one question keeps coming to me. So we write a user story while fulfilling the requirements. Fine, as a specific user, I want this. Easy to narrate that. So how are we going to look at a scenario where there is an improvement of something? So whenever we are going to discuss about improvement of something, it is quite obvious we need to look at it. What is that improvement user is looking at? Now when I am submitting a particular request or accessing something, it is taking some time. Means there is some delay. Now user experience can be enhanced by reducing that particular time. That is improvement. As a user, the user story, basic user story doesn't change. But in the performance perspective, you may require to visualize that. So problem statement has to come in. Accordingly, user story has to be articulated. Then once the user story is written, it is required to put the user story mapping. So user story mapping represents and arranges user stories that help with understanding the system's functionalities, the system's backlog, planning releases, and providing value to the customers. So typically this involves arranging or organizing user stories based on the priority along the horizontal axis. So I will horizontally when you move, so I will say which one is the priority, which user stories are priority, first thing which I need to focus on. So vertical arrangements represents how in a given specific user story, how the activities perspective, task perspective, sub-task perspective, further down how it gets elaborated to improving the levels, how it goes forward. So now let us look at an user story mapping with an example of, let me say, net banking services provided by a bank for account holders. When I say net banking service, it is quite obvious. It is also has to be provided through having a product which banking application would use. So, but here we need to visualize the user's journey while accessing the net banking portal, viewing the account details, paying bills like utility bills, doing a lot of transactions within that particular portal, net banking access the moment they do, like generating statements or transferring money to one of the beneficiaries, etc. So all these transactions, so what is being done. So in this user story map, let us see how does it look like. So few activities are considered here, like logging into the account, means net banking portal will come in, then one would input their credentials and then they log in. Now that journey of the users in a specific activity, what they do is visualized. Now log into account in the sense, obviously one has to go to that portal. So go to login page, then enter credentials, login ID and password. So once that login ID and password is entered, obviously there is a process engine which runs behind to provide the necessary access. Now, if that credentials are not working, or if I don't remember it, reset password is an option immediately. Now, as I go through further from this subtask, in all the particular columns which I have given here, as you go through this, as I deep dive into it further, it goes on. So until the person gets an access to the account and then start doing the transactions, it goes up to that level. So I can keep writing the subtasks further. So manage account. So you would go to account page once you access it. Then you'll select the specific account, because you may have many different account types which is there with the bank. You may be having one or many. So in the scenario you have more than one, obviously you will select that account and account details will be displayed to you. So this user will not do, but user will get that. So we are visualizing that. And further, after account details are displayed, what user would do, then further you would keep visualizing that. So some of the transaction like generating statement, transferring money, so even for that the steps are written. So going to statement page, then selecting the account for which you need a statement, then selecting the period from when to when the statement one is requiring, and then further clicking on it and downloading that particular statement, or choosing an options mentioning that I need this in an email or I need an hard copy of this. So similarly transferring money, so you will go to that specific page where you need to transfer the money. So you may have the beneficiary there in the list already added if you have added earlier, or newly you're adding a beneficiary. So there are various types of transfers, like so international transfer you will have, local domestic transfer you will have, within a bank, accounts being within a same bank. Bank A to consumers. So from me, if I am a consumer transferring money to another consumer of the same bank, and vice versa. That is one of the options. Second is a bank consumer having and transferring a money to some other bank account of someone else. That is another scenario. Or transferring money for my own account in another bank. So various different scenarios you come across. So then limitation, or depending on what kind of beneficiaries are these, what is the limitations, and how are you going to authenticate them. So the moment I visualize a specific transaction and activities of user stories, what are the things an user can do, then I can keep writing, mapping this to each of those flow, and see how the flow happens. So this flow helps me to bring in all those features and functionality, and also prioritizing them. So can I say the beneficiary option would be the basic thing which consumer would give? I think initially, if I go back when actually net banking features were provided by the bank, the basic thing was just viewing the account. That was the given. Statement download was given. Otherwise, there was no opportunity to transfer money. There was no opportunity to do something beyond that. So now as we see today, the lot of flexibility has brought in with lot of new features, functionalities in the net banking or mobile banking options. So they evolve. So as they evolve, it is quite obvious we may require to keep adding those features, functionality by writing the user stories. This is how the enhancement happens. So overall, if you look at user story mapping helps in terms of understanding not just the user story of one transaction, associated transaction in the user story, what happens throughout the journey, that would help. So this will also support to understand and visualize what needs to be created to ultimately give that access to the user. So the end-to-end flow should be visualized, and also needs to be prioritization and has to be looked at as well. Now what are the advantages of user story mapping? So the advantages wise, helps with prioritizing work, as I explained in the example. Similarly, the focus is on user value. The moment I click on web page www.abcbank.com, now the bank page will come. I will have an interface of login. I will go and click on login. Now from the point I open a browser and input that URL and then click on login, and login page comes in. How long it takes? So there are many things which is involved. The browser things are involved. The system from which the person is accessing is involved. So removing that part, so thinking that both of them are working well, and what should be the response from the server where this particular website is hosted. That experience needs to be looked at. So that's how you look at user value in that transaction. Now once I put a credentials, now how quickly the authentication happens. What are the checks the bank portal does to ensure that the person who is logging in is a genuine user. Is it just a password? Is there any captcha codes? Is there any OTP sent? Or is there any secret code the person has to put in? So likewise, many things are involved while giving that experience to the user. So and today's user, if you just put in various different checks points, they understand because they are well educated. So why all those things like CAPTCHA or OTP scenarios came in? So these are came in because more and more informed the people has become, then their ability to hack also improved. So more and more levels added to ensure that only that genuine user will enter the user account. Similarly, when you visualize any product and user journey in the user's interest, what are the things which is going to create value that needs to be understood. So only that experience will help for the user to realize the benefit. Then roadblocks are highlighted. So as we visualize this journey, so this will tell me, so what would stop me to move forward? Is there any concerns? Is there any constraints? Like for example, if you want to activate a beneficiary, but for some limited period, you can only send the limited amount of money. Why is that done? By chance, if the beneficiary is added by that individual who is not a genuine user, so we are actually holding it, right? So by the time that freezing time, whatever is given, so by the time the message goes to the actual consumer telling that there is a user activated like this, and if at all, if it is not a genuine user, obviously the person can call to the bank saying that this is not the beneficiary which I have added. There's something which is not correct. So they are giving that space. So how did they visualize this has to be done? So as we looked at the journey of adding a beneficiary, it's quite obvious when beneficiary is added, if by chance someone who is not authorized adds it. So who is going to disbenefit? Obviously user will be disbenefited. So that blocks, that constraints are visualized. Similarly, in making or creating that features functionality, what should be the basic features or in the product should be ready. Only then I can add this feature. Even that will be visible, right? So roadblocks will be highlighted and that those will be made visible so that easy for you to move forward, prioritizing and ensuring that it goes in the flow required to accomplish that value. So then ensuring team unity because everyone will have a visualization, user stories and mapping reads a lot of discussion, brings the people to have a common understanding. So obviously that unity, the collaboration would come in. Focus on constant improvement. So improvement is the key. Whatever you do, you have just adopted a waterfall methodology. You have just adopted an agile. You write user stories. You raise epics. You write bring in that various different methods to do something. Whatever you do, whether it is a product or a service or a process or a specific transactions, task, reports, whatever we make. So all that should help in terms of identifying the opportunities for improvement and making that improvements. That is very important. Today, as all of us know, Agile has become a well-known development methodology and the approach of choice for many development teams, especially those trying to create an environment of continuous delivery. When we think of Agile, we often think of high levels of collaboration and flexibility as well as iterative environment in which requirements evolve alongside the changing needs. So as a result, we also tend to conceptualize agile as an approach that helps development teams across various industries deliver new features faster. But how do we get there? What does history of agile entail? And how can knowing the history of agile help us better understand the methodology and its positive impact on today's development world? Let us look at it. So now, historically, if you see, the waterfall approach was fine. It was delivering the required value, but it required teams to stick to the requirements and scope of work set out at the very beginning of the project and not make any changes or additions along the way as the project progresses. And following that fixed plan could prove trouble sometimes. Comparing to the scenarios which we had earlier versus today, the trouble is more, challenge is more. So reason being waterfall methodology prioritized bringing a complete product to market, meaning it could take years before teams finish the project in hand. The scenarios of change, delay in responding to problem resolution, meeting changing market requirements were challenging, which led to introduction of agile methodologies. So the various development methods like Scrum, rapid application development, extreme programming, DSDM, feature-driven development, and pragmatic programming were introduced. So it all started early, I think in 2001 it was introduced. However, it all started in the spring of 2000 when a group of 17 software developers in Oregon to discuss how they could speed up development in order to bring new software to market faster. So they recognized two key opportunities that achieving this goal would make possible. So reducing the time to the benefits for those users in order to resolve the product market fit and development problems. Secondly, getting feedback from users quickly to confirm the usefulness of new software and continue to improve on it accordingly. So further, these group of 17 developers met again at a ski resort in Snowbird, Utah, US. So they created popularly known as Agile Manifesto. So which laid out four key values. So which says individuals and interactions or processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following the plan are valued more. Now, further, between the time when it was introduced till today, Agile has become popular and adoption of that has increased. Reason being the flexibility that Agile brought into the system. So several organizations across the world started using it. But what happened further? So Agile gave the result, but there was a challenge. So there were some issues that Agile faced to handle widespread usage. That is mainly whenever there is a scalability requirements. So what is that scalability challenges? It is quite obvious. How can an implementation of Agile for large and more complex project and how hard the process to scale Agile? So this was not clear. The very reason, the challenge which come across, which the practitioners actually faced was, one is lack of experience with Agile methodologies, little understanding of frameworks, methods, and how to implement them. Next, large scale coordination. So when I say specific project, a small project, it was easy implementation of Agile and then going forward. All the frameworks, what I mentioned earlier, it was easy. But the moment you want to do scaling to the bigger organization, the complex environment, the coordination, collaboration, dependency management between usually distributed teams, geographically distributed teams was challenging. And thirdly, having a clear understanding of what needs to be completed in the sprints and what the bigger picture is. So fourth, aligning the entire organization and managing commitments. So definitely organization required alignment. The products or services which are being produced by the project needs an alignment. So the need of alignment was basically to ensure the organization gets the value out of whatever they have invested. So fifth, unrealistic expectation with respect to speed of delivery. So unable to respond to this particular scenario so that organization can able to respond quickly. So it was not happening. So time to benefits I was mentioning about. So generally earlier we used to speak about time to market, but today it has been replaced by time to benefits. How quickly the value of that particular product or services introduced to the market is realized by the users. That is very important. So the framework of scaling Agile, there are various different frameworks. So some of the most effective ways to scale Agile would be large scale Scrum, which is called as LS, scaled Agile framework, disciplined Agile, Scrum at scale, Nexus Scrum, the Spotify model. So when I say less, the large scale Scrum, it is a way of scaling Agile and scaling Scrum to large and big product development groups. It has been used since 2005 in different software and hardware products in industries such as banking and telecom. So when it comes to scaled Agile framework, so it is a set of organizations and workflow patterns intended to guide enterprise in scaling lean and agile practices. So it is made freely available by Scaled Agile Inc., which retains the copyrights and registered trademarks. So the disciplined agile delivery, which is also called as DAD. is a software development portion of the disciplined agile toolkit. So DAD enables teams to make simplified process decisions around incremental and iterative solution delivery. So DAD builds on many practices by advocates of agile software development, including Scrum, agile modeling, lean software development, and others. So Scrum at scale. So Scrum originally, if you look at outline in the Scrum guide, is a framework for developing, delivering, and sustaining complex products by a single team. So since its inception, its usage was extended to the creation of products, processes, services, and systems that require the efforts of multiple teams. Whereas Scrum at scale was created to efficiently coordinate this new ecosystem of teams. It achieves this goal through setting up a minimum viable bureaucracy via scale-free architecture. Now coming to next one, the Nexus Scrum. So this consists of multiple cross-functional Scrum team working together to deliver a potentially releasable integrated increment at least by the end of each sprint. Based on dependencies, the teams may self-organize and select the most appropriate members to do specific work. So lastly, the Spotify model, which is basically people-driven, autonomous framework for scaling agile while emphasizing the importance of culture and network. This methodology uses squads, tribes, chapters, guilds, the foundation of which is squad, which acts like Scrum team. So further, let us look at our focus area of this particular video, which is basically what is scaled agile framework. So scaled agile framework, as I mentioned earlier, consists of collection of principles, best practices, and processes that would enable large organizations to adopt agile methodologies. So it would help them deliver products and services of the highest quality faster. So SAFE is best suited for complex projects that involves several large teams at the project's program and portfolio levels. The current version of SAFE is version 5, which has 7 core competencies based on which it can help organizations, the large organization in specific. So SAFE has certain core values, which are basically alignment, built-in quality, transparency, and program execution. So when I say alignment, so I was mentioning about aligning with business requirement, business strategies. So it is needed to keep pace with fast changing, disruptive competitive forces and geographically distributed teams. While empowered, agile teams are good, even great, but the responsibility for strategy and alignment cannot rest with the combined opinions of the teams, no matter how good they are. Instead, alignment must rely on enterprise's business objective. So it also need to require to keep up with the change, the competitions, and then the dynamics across in the environment where organization is doing their business. So next is built-in quality. So built-in quality is basically to ensure that every element and every increment of the solutions reflect quality standards throughout the development lifecycle. So quality is not added later. Building quality is prerequisite of lean and flow. Without it, the organization will likely operate with large batches of unverified, unvalidated work, which leads to the product or services which is not okay. And also that would lead towards excessive rework, which is not good, and slower velocities, which is not allow the organization to respond quickly to the dynamics of the market. So third one is transparency. So transparency, which basically need to enable teams to rely on each other. There should be trust which needs to be built. So based on which high performance can happen. So wherever the trust exists, so when the business and development can confidently rely on each other to act with integrity, particularly in times of responding quickly or to work out a solution for resolving something which is actually not allowing things to move forward. So without trust, no one can build high performance teams and programs. So the confidence needed to make reasonable commitments is very, very essential. So fourth is program execution. So SAFE focuses on working systems and business outcomes, which mainly, for example, for teams to execute and continuously deliver value, SAFE places an intense focus on working systems and business outcomes. So this is because while many enterprises start the transformation with individual agile teams, they often become frustrated as even those teams struggle to deliver more substantial amount of solution value, reliability, and efficiently. So delivering solutions with better value, reliability, and efficiency, effectiveness is very, very essential. And here we're speaking about ensuring the scalability to the bigger organization. So program management plays a very important role. So that requires a lot of communication, collaboration. So without better execution of that, without handling it better, things cannot go the way it is required. So various competencies SAFE recommends. So SAFE competencies involves team and technical agility, agile product delivery, enterprises solution delivery, lean portfolio management, organizational agility, continuous learning culture, and then lean agile leadership. So when I say team and technical agility, so agile teams are high performing and cross functional. Business solutions are built by business and technical teams, delighting customer with high quality output. So this requires an able team which understand agile frameworks, which follows it, which complies with it, and also technically sound. So agile product delivery, which actually refers to the scenario where the customer is at the center of organization's product strategy. So development is based on cadence and releases on demand, exploring integrity, deploying and innovating continuously. Then enterprise solution delivery. So building big system with the help of lean, coordinating and aligning the entire supply chain, evolving the live system continuously, requires to ensure the visibility of entire enterprises and providing solution accordingly. Lean portfolio management, which basically focuses on aligning the strategy, funding and execution, optimizing operations across the portfolio, decentralized decision making powered by lightweight governance. Then organizational agility. A lean agile mindset is created across the enterprise. It is very essential. For example, I am working in a project, I have an attrition. If HR does not understand my project dynamics, and if they are not agile, me as a project organization becoming agile will not help. Similarly, the procurement, similarly, the processes. So very essential for all the organization units to become agile so that business operations are able to complement, contribute that speed or the change what is required. So opportunities and threats are addressed quickly. So risks are identified and addressed quickly. So they are worked on it. So risk management can become easier with the involvement of right stakeholders. Continuous learning culture. So in this scenario, everyone learns and grows together. Exploration and creativity are a very important part of organization where there should be innovation, creation, execution. Maybe I think I come across certain terms like intelligent risk taking. So learning through failures. Failure should lead towards inquiry, not towards blaming. So these are all the things which are more and more discussed when we want to make an organization a learning organization. The continuous improvement of solutions, services and processes is everyone's responsibility. Then lean agile leadership. So by modeling desired behaviors, inspiring others, aligning words, actions and mindset to lean agile principles and values, lead, change and guide others. So this requires a lot of accountability and ensuring the correct information, well-informed individuals to take forward things. Now, how does SAFE work? So SAFE, considering those competencies, what we looked at, the 7 competencies. So let us see what happens in each of the competencies. How does SAFE work using these competencies? So firstly, let us look at team and technical agility, which basically involves an agile team of 5 to 11 members, which helps defining, build, test and deploy products. So this is done by dividing the task into small, easier to manage time boxed iterations, right? Then Scrum team led by the Scrum Master and supported by product owner plan and then deliver the product in increments. So further, after delivery, they have a retrospective to determine how the iterations went and how it can be improved. This is incorporated into next iterations planning phase. So the method used here could be Scrum or Kanban. So both are popular. The combination of this can be used. So Scrum basically helps in ensuring that things moves in iterations and everything is visible and delivered, whereas Kanban supports in terms of making it more visible and able to manage it better. So agile product delivery. So a large organization usually consists of several agile teams, each led by their respective Scrum Masters. So these teams together represent agile release trains, also called as ART. So they usually involve 50 to 125 people. So ART are cross-functional and involve everyone who understands customer needs and can help with building and delivering the solution required. So ART uses an agile delivery practices like the one used by the teams to deliver value to the customers. So it uses time-boxed iterations called program increments or PIs, which usually involves 4 to 5 iterations. All the teams they get together to plan their work during PI planning events. So they should work together, they should have full visibility while doing it. So three major components which are required when we do agile product delivery is release train engineer, then project management, and then system architect. So release train engineer represents the coach of the art facilitated the PI planning process. The project management provides the vision for the project and backlog of the tasks. System architect provides architectural guidance for the process, and then the teams then make plans regarding what they would be able to deliver. So the program board is also drawn up to determine dependencies between the teams, which also goes through program iterations, the PIs as I mentioned earlier. Then after every iterations, the art shows the integrated output to all teams through a system demo. So after the PI is complete, all team get together to retrospect event called the inspect and adapt events. So further, a continuous delivery pipeline is set up based on the art. DevOps practices are also used to ensure value is available on demand. I think the term DevOps is becoming more and more popular today, which actually providing that visibility, need for collaboration, need for cultural transformation. So which helps in terms of bringing that agility across the organization as well as learning organization. So one of the principles of DevOps itself says continuous learning. There should be continuous experimentation and learning, risk taking, intelligence risk taking, and also we come across speaking the concepts like same army concept, like introducing failures into existing systems and learn what can fail and what is the solution for it. And that can help in terms of becoming more resilient and reliable system. So DevOps has become popular and adoption of that, discussion on that is become more common across the organizations. So next, enterprise solution delivery. So enterprise solution delivery, let us look at a scenarios where a single art may not be able to deliver an appropriate solution. A solution train which coordinates multiple arts and suppliers would be able to provide solutions in large and complex scenarios. So meaning consideration of enterprise as a whole, seeing end-to-end organization, entire visibility. So basically what is that we are trying to achieve? So alignment we discussed about, which requires the objective of organization because organization is investing. So whatever we do at various different levels should complement to each other rather than contradicting. So that complementing thought or complementing visibility can happen only when someone has a bigger visibility. Enterprise wide outlook. Then the three major components that are required in enterprise solution delivery would be solution management, solutions architect, and solution train engineer. The solution management holds content authority over what needs to be built. Solution architect handles the architecture across the arts. Solution train engineer enables coaching and facilitating of solutions train events. So next is lean portfolio management. So lean portfolio management provides ways of creating and combining strategic themes and portfolio vision. This enables solution development to be aligned with enterprise strategy. So the moment I say lean, firstly we should keep in mind that it's about creating value to the stakeholders. That is first thing. Second thing is elimination of waste. Now when I link this to strategy, when I link towards the organization's directions, what it sets, and while going in the directions, I should ensure no defects are actually moved downstreams or are eliminated when it goes to downstream. So customer should see the value, which is very important, and identification of all the contributions of waste has to be done and eliminated. So this ensures there is a value in organization's value stream, which also ensures that these value streams remain funded. So funding plays a very important role. So next is organizational agility. So when I say organizational agility, it should ensure the organizations, various business units in the organizations should be with that dynamics of agility which organization is going through, which organization is moving through. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a project where you have adopted agile methodologies, it's quite obvious for your pace, for your flexibility, for your speed, other business units which are working with you to support you should also complement to that. They cannot become slower. They cannot have their own pace of doing things. Like in your project, you have a procurement, you have a recruitment, you have some claims to be cleared from HR. Maybe you're dependent on certain tools and environments. Now, if these are not agile, if these are not responding in the same flexibility or same speed what the agile project team requires, then obviously things will not flow further. Now, when I say agile, obviously we introduce products or services quickly to the environment. Now, someone needs to manage. We have operations. Now, can operations manage the products or services which they are not aware of? Now, even there, the agility is required. As I keep introducing the new products or services to the environment, operations should also be well informed and educated about it so that they can monitor and manage them effectively and efficiently. If they fail, I think users will not have a good experience. Your product or services may have a great features, functionalities, but however, if whenever there is a query about that product features or functionality, whenever there is an issue, the incident which user actually calls, the first point of contact for any users would be the operations. The moment operations fails to respond with the right clarifications or right resolution quickly, then obviously user experience will result in not a good way. I think customer satisfaction or customer delight will be at stake. So even operation should become agile. So rest of the business units which are supporting, like funding we spoke about. If funding is not done in an agile way, obviously the things cannot move smoother or easier. So everything across organization should become agile. Organizational agility has to be ensured. So enabling portfolio with strategic agility, making change in the direction depending on the scenario, then encouraging the growth of lean thinking people and agile teams. So people should be working towards ensuring creating value always. Every task, every transaction is what they do should be enabled through it. So they should also know whatever we are doing, how this particular task or the work or the results what I am creating results in value addition or value creation to the organization. Does it really align to the organization's requirement? Is it fulfilling? Maybe customer as a stakeholder or my own organization, the business unit which is actually investing on this project. So in that context or in that perspective, everyone should be aware of that alignment, the directions, the vision. Then focusing on value and helping with organizing and reorganizing, building an environment for the flow of value across the organization. So everyone should realize value. So value is what? Value can be defined in the perspective of every individual's background and every individual's requirement because it's a perceived one. So there may be real thing what we have created, but perception is different. So the perceived versus what is actually created should be as closer as possible. So zero deviation is expectation, but difficult, but however, it should have a tendency towards it. It should actually be very near to that perceived reality, but two things involved. One is that I create a features and functionality for my product or services which fulfills customer requirements. Customer may not know, not well educated, not aware of it, and don't know how to realize that value, how to know how these features and functionalities can be used. So now if you educate that customer, the user, how to use it, what are the values it can create, and do some exercise in terms of educating, training, coaching, customer can visualize it and understand that. That is one possibility. Second thing is customer is very matured and our product does not have features and functionality required. So these are the two scenarios which require a lot of interactions and engagement, so that increasing in terms of usage of product and services and realizing those values. So this has to be encouraged more and more. So further, continuous learning culture. So when we say learning, it's quite obvious. Organization should keep maturing. Individuals in organization should keep maturing in terms of capabilities, in terms of ability to do new things, innovate, the knowledge, the capabilities, skills, competencies. So that can be possible only through learning. So learning should be continuous. So this ensures an atmosphere of innovation and constant improvement until organizations becomes a learning organization. So meaning at every level, each individuals, each professionals, each engineers, each executives invest their time in learning. They learn through what they are doing. They go through formal training. They bring in that formal training learning into the actions here. Further, they learn. So continuous experimentation, creating an hypothesis, working on those hypotheses, aligning that to the requirement of organizations, and seeing how is it complementing to the organization's requirement. So seeing through these are very essential. So the organization which is having the culture of continuous learning can sustain and grow continually. There is no question of looking back. If organization has a scenario of not learning, they will fade away. They may fail to exist. So it is very much required to understand the market dynamics, continuous learning there. Capabilities and skill enhancement, continuous learning here. Innovations and making things better, continuous learning. So continuous learning helps organization to be there in the industry and continue with the competition. So next is lean agile leadership. So it's quite obvious. Leadership plays very important role. It's about guiding, it's about owning, it's about showing directions, it's about ensuring everyone does the task, everybody is motivated. So the leaders must embody, teach, and exhibit lean and agile principles and values. So firstly, they should understand what it is. They should be aware of it. They should have an exposure to it. They should have full awareness of it. As I was learning about continuous learning culture in the previous point, so leaders should do that first. So only then I think the followers will actually have learning adopted to themselves and things move smoother and better. And this should happen across the organization. So by doing this, it is quite obvious organization can become better agile. Organization is complemented to achieve the objectives and goals what they wanted to accomplish. And there is a safe configurations which one needs to ensure, which involves essential safe, large solution safe, portfolio safe, and full safe. So when I say essential safe, it acts as the foundation for all safe configurations and is the easiest starting point for implementation. So large solution safe, it is used for building large and complex solutions, whereas portfolio safe provides principles and strategies that can enable business agility in an enterprise. So when I say portfolio, it should be understood as a portfolio of an organization as a whole. The service portfolio, the product portfolio, the business portfolio. So understanding of that and complementing to that is very essential. So full safe is a comprehensive configuration that includes all competencies and ensures business agility. So advantages and disadvantages of safe. So advantages involves enabling decentralized decision making. It eases collaboration across cross-functional teams. It ensures decisions are made with strategic objectives in mind. So disadvantages include additional layers of oversight, which makes it resemble the waterfall approach. The top-down approach can limit understanding of the software lifecycle and cause bad planning. So visibility, providing that visibility is very essential. then larger planning cycles and roles that are fixed in development cycles.
In this session, we will be learning about the two most popular software development lifecycle models. We will be understanding the contrast between the agile model and the waterfall model of software development. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, before having a look at the differences in the two models, it is important to understand the basics of software development lifecycle and the need for it. As the name suggests, software development lifecycle is a process that is used in any software industry to design, develop, and test a software. The goal of the lifecycle is to meet the quality standards of a software. A software is always made keeping in mind the customer expectations, time deadlines, and cost estimations. The framework is a collection of steps in which different tasks are defined and performed at every step. Let's have a look at all the steps involved in the process of software development. Software development lifecycle has 6 different stages. The first stage is planning and requirement analysis. It is the most important and fundamental stage. In this step, the inputs are taken from everyone involved in the process. This information is then used to plan the basic project approach and to conduct product feasibility study. This helps the project to excel in the economical, operational, and technical areas. Then comes the second step, that is the defining phase or the requirement defining phase. Once the analysis of requirements is done, this step involves defining them and getting them approved by the customer. This is made possible through a document called an SRS or Software Requirement Specification document. This consists of all the product requirements to be designed and developed during the project lifecycle. After the defining phase comes the designing phase. The SRS that was made in the last step is now used as a reference to construct the project. On the basis of the SRS, a design document specification or DDS is documented, which helps in deciding the designing approach of the project. The next step is the building or development. As the name suggests, the actual development starts in this step. The code for the software is generated as per the DDS documented in the previous stage. For the code, the programming language is chosen with respect to the type of software being developed. After the development, the step of testing the product comes into the picture. This stage refers to the stage where the product defects are reported, tracked, fixed, and retested. This is done until the product reaches the quality standards defined in the SRS. The last phase is the deployment phase. After the testing is done and the product is ready to be deployed, it is formally released in the market. The product may first be released in a limited segment and tested in the real business environment. Then, based on the feedback, the product may be released as it is or with some upgradations in the market. Now, when we know the steps of the software development lifecycle, let's have a look at the SDLC models. There are several software development lifecycle models defined and designed which are followed during the software development process. These models may be referred to as software development process models. Every model has its own set of unique steps to attain success. There are several SDLC models in the market. Here, we will be discussing the two most popular models, the waterfall model and the agile model. So let's begin with what is waterfall methodology. The waterfall model or the waterfall methodology was the first process model to be introduced. It is a linear sequential life cycle model that is easy to understand and operate. In the waterfall model, each phase must be completed before the next phase has to begin. The next phase entirely depends on the output or deliverables of the previous phase. The entire process of software development is divided into a sequence of several phases. All the phases can be seen as a waterfall. Flowing steadily downwards, no phase overlaps the other phase and begins once the previous phase is complete. The steps involved begin with gathering of requirements and go up to the phase of maintenance. Let's have a look at all the phases in detail. The first phase is the requirement gathering phase. As the name implies, all the possible requirements of the project to be developed are gathered in this phase and documented in a requirement specification document. Then comes the system design phase. The requirements gathered in the previous phase are studied in this phase and the system design is prepared. The design helps in specifying all the requirements and also helps in defining the overall system architecture. After the design phase comes the implementation phase. After the inputs in the system design phase, the system is developed in small programs called units. These units are integrated in the upcoming phase. Here in this phase, each unit is developed and tested for its functionality, which is referred to as unit testing. Now comes the integration and testing phase. All the units developed in the previous phase are now integrated into a system. Post-integration, the entire system is tested for any faults or failures. After the testing phase comes the deployment phase. Once the entire testing is completed, the functional testing and the non-functional testing, the product is deployed in the customer environment or released into the market. Now comes the last phase, that is the maintenance phase. The issues that come up in the client environment are fixed in this phase. Then to enhance the project, some better versions are released. Maintenance is done to deliver these changes in the customer environment. All these steps or phases are strictly followed one after the other like a waterfall. Moving forth, we know about the waterfall model and its phases. So let's now see what is the agile methodology. The agile methodology believes that every project is different and needs to be handled differently, and the existing methods need to be tailored to best suit the project requirements. The agile methodology promotes continuous iteration of development and testing all through the software development lifecycle. The process looks forward to quick delivery of all the functional components involved in the project. In Agile, the tasks are divided into small time frames to deliver specific features for a release. These divisions are known as sprints, and these sprints have their own set of deliverables which are decided at the beginning of each sprint. The work can be reviewed by the project team and the customer with the help of daily builds and sprint demos. Demo working software is considered to be the best means of communication with the customers to understand their requirements and not just depending on documentation. One of the major focuses of the Agile methodology is on the customer. So the process involves the customer throughout the project. As the requirements cannot be gathered completely in the beginning of the project due to various factors, continuous customer interaction is very important to get proper product requirements. Then there are several phases involved in the Agile software development lifecycle, beginning with the building of concepts and going up to the retirement process. The life cycle consists of 5 different phases. Let's have a look at all these phases in detail. The first stage of the Agile life cycle is the initiation phase. The initiation phase or the inception phase is about the finalization of project scope and the return on investment. In this step, the team members that will be needed for the project are identified. Then time constraint and other resources required to complete the project are also taken into consideration. The second stage in the life cycle is the planning phase. In this phase, the team gets together and identifies exactly what they are looking for. They make a firm plan of how to make the project a success. In this phase, the risks are estimated and the milestones are developed with an initial release plan. After the planning phase comes the development phase. Once the requirements have been defined, based on the feedback from the product owners and stakeholders, the actual work of development begins. Agile product development delivers high quality working products in incremental phases or sprints. Then comes the release phase. The product, after being developed, is now deployed and starts getting used by the end users. The stages now are closely monitored for any errors, defects, or bugs that might have been left in the testing part. This phase continues until the project is fixed with all the bugs and is ready to be retired. The last and the final stage is the retirement phase. This last phase marks the deployment of a newer version of the product in which all the bugs are fixed. There may be some minor changes of software in the newer version, and the older version is no longer supported. The product may also be retired if it is not cost effective in the present business scenario. Now, when we know the basics of the two SDLC models and their life cycle phases, we shall differentiate between the waterfall model and agile model depending on different aspects in software development. The first aspect we will see here is the life cycle. In the case of agile methodology, the life cycle of the model is in a continuous iterative format. This helps in developing and testing a project in several iterations. Whereas, in the case of waterfall methodology, the life cycle is in a linear sequential format where the development steps are followed in the form of a top-down approach. The second difference we will see is on the basis of rigidity. As we know, agile model is a very flexible way of building a software in which the feedback of changes may be accepted even after the development has begun. Whereas the waterfall model is least flexible and the structure of the model is rigidly followed while developing a software. The second difference we will see is on the basis of rigidity. As we know, agile model is a very flexible way of building a software in which the feedback or changes may be accepted even after the development has begun. Whereas the waterfall model is least flexible and the structure of the model is rigidly followed while developing a software. Then, the next aspect we shall discuss is collaboration. If we talk about the collaborative nature of the model, then agile model is very collaborative in nature, which enables it to deliver a better output and complete the project in a more productive manner. Whereas the waterfall model is not open for collaborations. It does not allow the team to collaborate and strictly follows the sequence of steps. The next important aspect is the process. In the case of agile method, the process is divided into sprints that have their own deadlines and deliverables at the end. The waterfall model has a process of software development that is broken down into several phases that go as a top-down approach, giving a deliverable at the end. Now, after the process, the aspect we will consider is accepting changes. In the case of agile methodology, the changes can be accepted after the initial planning is complete. Whereas, in the case of waterfall model, the development requirements cannot be changed once the project development has begun. The next important aspect in our list is software development. If we consider the agile model, the process of software development is a collection of many different projects as the agile approach completes the project in several sprints. Whereas in the case of waterfall model, software development is completed as a single project or deliverable. The next aspect we will discuss is testing. In the case of agile methodology, testing is performed in the same step in which programming or building of the software is being performed. Whereas in the waterfall model, there is a separate testing phase in which the system is tested, and this phase comes after the build phase. We often come across the question which development model to choose for software development. These contrasts, especially these last three, will help you understand which model will be a better fit for your work. The next aspect we will see is focus. That means what the agile or waterfall model exactly focuses on. So agile model focuses on customer satisfaction and performs the steps with their respective inputs, making the entire process to be customer-centric. Whereas the waterfall model strictly focuses on the steps in the process and rigidly follows the sequence. It just focuses on completing the project at the end of the sequential process. Whereas the waterfall model strictly focuses on the steps in the process and rigidly follows the sequence. It just focuses on completing the project or software at the end of the sequential process. Now, the next important factor is the projects. That states which of the two models is a better fit for what kind of projects. If we talk about the agile process, it is well suited for projects in which the requirements may change. Whereas, if we consider the waterfall process, it is well suited for well-defined projects in which all the requirements are well stated and no changes are expected. The last crucial contrasting factor is the customer satisfaction. As we know, Agile model is customer-centric and hence involves the customer at every step of the process, takes their input and implements them. Whereas the waterfall model is an internal process that does not involve the customers and just strictly follows the sequence of steps.
Let's talk about what Agile is. Agile is a very popular principle that is used in software or project management. The approach involves creating products in an incremental manner from the start of the project rather than delivering all of it at once at the end of the project. Agile processes focus on frequent inspection and adoption, on encouraging teamwork, self-organization, accountability, and delivering high-quality software. The business approach is to align development with the needs of the customer and that of the organization. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the Agile process delivers work in small, usable increments. For organizations to take advantage of Agile principles, they need to adhere to the values that are mentioned in the Agile Manifesto. Agile puts individuals and interactions over process and tools. Working products are more important than comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration is much more important than contract negotiation, and responding to changes holds more significance over following a plan. With Agile, the clients and the project team can have large amounts of interaction. This helps them understand each other better. Clients have greater transparency to every phase of the project. The output is delivered in a predictable manner and sometimes can happen sooner than expected. It provides high-quality development, testing, and collaboration due to the project being broken down into smaller units. And thanks to continuous evaluation of requirements, plans, and results, teams can respond to change really fast. Now, let's talk about some Agile methodologies. Let's have a look at each of them. First off, XP. Extreme Programming, or XP, is a framework with which teams can create high-quality software. It can also greatly help improve their quality of life. It also involves the appropriate engineering practices to enable software development. Now, it is applicable for teams handling changing requirements while working with smaller teams, handling risks due to new technologies, and much more. Next up, we have Kanban. Kanban is a visual system that can help organizations visualize their workflow, to design, manage, and to improve the flow of the systems. Now, it's applicable in scenarios where the work is unpredictable. It is also used for deploying work quickly without having to wait for the other components. Next up, we have Lean. Lean provides a set of tools and services that focuses on identifying and removing waste so that the speed of the process development can be improved. With Lean, waste is minimized and value to the customer is maximized. The principles of Lean can be applied to any sector which is liable to produce waste. Then we have Scrum. So we'll be taking a look at Scrum in a little bit, but basically, Scrum is a framework that involves teams establishing a hypothesis, then trying it out, reflecting on their experience, and making corresponding adjustments. And finally, we have Crystal. Crystal is a software development approach that puts people and interactions over tools and processes. With Crystal, processes are streamlined and optimization is improved. Crystal is applicable in scenarios where the focus is on the team communication being strengthened. Now, let's have a look at what Scrum is. Scrum is a framework through which teams can work together with the help of sprints. Sprints are events that are time-boxed and are usually of 2 to 4 weeks length. Scrum enables teams to learn from their experiences, self-organize and work on their problems, reflect on their successes and losses for improvement. The team's progress is measured with the help of a 15-minute long daily meeting called Daily Scrum. During this meeting, team members talk about what they plan to do on that day, what they did the previous day, and what roadblocks they were facing. With Scrum, teams can deliver their projects in an efficient manner. Time and money are used effectively. Thanks to Scrum meetings, visibility is improved, and improvements can be made thanks to constant feedback from clients and customers, and so much more. Now, let's have a look at how Scrum works. So here's the entire process. Let's have a look at each component. Firstly, we have product backlog. First, a list of all the tasks that need to be completed is created. Now this list is called the product backlog. Now completion of all these tasks represent the successful completion of the project. Next, we have sprint planning. Here, the team decides the different tasks that they are going to work on and focus on delivering them during the upcoming sprint. Then, we have sprint backlog. Now, the tasks that were discussed in the product backlog are then added to the sprint backlog, which is basically just another smaller list which consists of selected items from the product backlog. Next up, we have the Scrum team. The Scrum team is a collection of 5 to 9 people who are working on the tasks mentioned in the sprint backlog. Then we have the daily Scrum. Now this is a 15-minute long session during which team members can synchronize their activities and determine what they did the previous day, what they plan to do on that day, and what roadblocks they were facing. Next up, sprint review. Now after a sprint is complete, a meeting involving the Scrum team, Scrum Master, Product Owner, and stakeholders take place. During this meeting, the team shows off what they accomplished during the sprint. Questions are asked, observations are made, feedback and suggestions are also provided. Now, back to the product backlog. Now, the product backlog is presented to the stakeholders so that the product owner can get some feedback for upcoming sprints. Then there's also the sprint retrospective. Now, during this meeting, previous mistakes are identified and new ways to handle them are determined. The data that's obtained from this meeting is also used while planning the new sprint. And finally, we have increment. Now, in this stage, a workable output is provided to the stakeholders. And after this, another sprint starts and the whole process is repeated again. Now, let's talk about Scrum versus Agile. Firstly, let's have a look at methodologies. Now, Agile is a set of principles that are iterative and incremental. Agile has a number of different methodologies you can choose from. There's XP, Crystal, Kanban, even Scrum for that matter. Let's talk about Scrum now. Scrum is an implementation of the concepts of Agile. So basically, most of the important components of Agile can be applied to Scrum as well. It provides the customer with incremental builds that are delivered to the customer in the span of 2 to 4 weeks. An organization can be agile, but not practice Scrum. However, an organization cannot practice Scrum without being agile. Next up, let's have a look at projects. Agile is more suited towards projects that have a small development team that consists of experts. Whereas on the side of Scrum, it's usually better suited for projects that are subject to a large amount of change, and that too rapidly. Next, we have leadership. Now for Agile, a project head takes care of all the tasks and has a very important role to play in the process of Agile. A project head represents the entire team and is responsible for getting issues resolved by assigning them to the appropriate members of the team. In Scrum, there's no leader. There's a Scrum Master who can overall guide the Scrum process, but the team addresses issues by themselves. It usually involves cross-functional and self-organizing teams. Next up, we have flexibility. Agile is relatively more rigid than Scrum and cannot handle changes with ease. It also requires a lot of upfront development process and changes within the organization. With Scrum, you can enable teams delivery. Agile requires frequent deliveries so that they can get feedback from the end user. This in turn will help make the product better. The product is delivered as well as updated on a regular basis. With Scrum, after a sprint, feedback from the client for a build is provided to the team. Scrum involves daily Scrum meetings to review and get feedback to determine the next steps of the project. The next sprint is only planned by the team after the current sprint is complete. Next, we have collaboration. With Agile, collaboration involves face-to-face interactions with team members of other cross-functional teams. For Scrum, daily stand-up meetings take place with specific roles like Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the Scrum team. And finally, we have design. With Agile, the design as well as its execution, it's relatively simple. With Scrum, the design and its execution can be innovative and experimental. So you might be wondering, which one should you choose? Now, among both these options, there's one thing that will remain common: Agile. Now, what you can decide upon is which Agile methodology you will be choosing. Is it Lean, is it Kanban, or is it Scrum? Let's jump into Scrum versus Kanban. So before we dive into the differences between Scrum and Kanban, let's have a look at what exactly Scrum is. Scrum is a simple agile project management framework that is used by organizations to help teams collaborate, handle unpredictability and complex projects or products while ensuring the products delivered are of the highest value. It describes a set of meetings, tools, and roles that enable teams to work in sync and help them structure themselves and manage their work. Scrum is one of those things that's really easy to understand but very difficult to master. And although Scrum is seen to be used generally by software development teams, its principles and themes are pretty universal and can be used with just about all kinds of teamwork. With Scrum, teams are able to learn from their experiences, what worked out, what didn't, and things like that. They're also able to organize themselves to handle their problems effectively and basically improve themselves by reflecting on them. So how does Scrum work? Here we have the first component, the product backlog. The product backlog consists of a list of tasks that need to be completed so that the goals of the stakeholders are achieved. Then the team decides what tasks from the product backlog they want to take up and deliver in a 2 to 4 week period called sprint, hence the name sprint planning. Next, the tasks that were discussed in the previous phase are added to the sprint backlog. This is a set of tasks which will be focused on in the ongoing sprint. Following this, the Scrum team, which is usually 5 to 9 members strong, will work on these tasks. Now, they also have regular Scrum meetings where they talk about their victories, the issues they face, and what they plan to do in the next 24 hours. And then they have the sprint review. The sprint review is a meeting during which the team shows what they accomplished during the sprint. Now, during this time, questions are asked, observations, feedback, and suggestions are made. The product owner also gets feedback for upcoming sprints from stakeholders. They also have a sprint retrospective. Now, during this session, past mistakes, potential issues, and new ways to handle them are identified. Data from here is incorporated into the new sprint plan. The final step is increment. Here, a workable and usable output is provided to the stakeholders. So now that we know how Scrum works, let's have a look at Kanban. Kanban comes from the Japanese word kanban, which literally means signboard. Like Scrum, Kanban is a popular agile framework that is a visual system by which the work can be managed with ease as it progresses. Kanban uses something known as the Kanban board to make these things possible. With this, you can easily identify bottlenecks and then fix them cost effectively at optimal speeds. The main focus with Kanban is transparency. Since everything related to the tasks are on the board, everyone can keep themselves updated. It also ensures that teams focus on their current tasks until they're done. This limits the amount of work that's in progress. So on the Kanban board, work is divided into smaller, more manageable pieces. The work that's needed to be done is written on a note or card and placed on a board. Columns on the board help represent where each item is, with respect to the workflow. Now let's have a look at what these are in detail. Let's find out how Kanban works. Now the board consists of three major components. There's the to-do list, which represents items that need to be completed. The ongoing column, which represents items that are being currently worked on. And the completed or the done column. Now these represent tasks or items that have already been completed. Now, although this is a physical representation of the board, several organizations use software versions of the board that replaces the sticky notes with cards that can be moved from one column to another as work progresses. At this point, you guys must have realized how similar these two frameworks sound. So let's run through some more of their similarities. Let's find out how they are similar. Firstly, they both have principles of lean and agile, which means reduction of waste, and both of them are time-boxed and iterative approaches that enable product delivery in an incremental manner. Both these frameworks aim to reduce the amount of work in progress. This forces the teams to ensure that they focus on a smaller set of tasks. This also makes blockers and bottlenecks a little more visible. In both cases, the work is divided into smaller, more manageable units. Both of these frameworks use pull scheduling. Now this means that products are only built based on demand rather than forecasts. Transparency plays a major role in both these frameworks by helping them drive process improvement. And in both cases, the release plan is continuously optimized. And finally, both these methods aim to deliver releasable software often and earlier than expected. Now, let's have a look at how these two frameworks are different from one another. Firstly, let's have a look at cadence. Cadence refers to the amount of time in a sprint or before a release. So when it comes to Scrum, the entire project is divided into time-constrained iterations, that is, into smaller, manageable units. But when it comes to Kanban, it's event-driven. The next criteria we're going to have a look at is release methodology. In Scrum, releases take place after each sprint, which usually takes 2 to 4 weeks to complete. For Kanban, releases take place in the form of continuous delivery. They happen in such a way that changes like new features, configuration changes, bug fixes, and experiments get to the users in a safe, quick, and sustainable manner. Next up, let's have a look at how changes are addressed in both these frameworks. In Scrum, no change can be made while the sprint is in progress. Once it's complete, changes can be considered in the sprint plan and then added to the sprint backlog. With Kanban, changes can be made at any time and incorporated into the workflow. Now, let's consider the metric that's being measured. In Scrum, for planning and process improvement, velocity, which is the measure of the work that can be completed by a team in a sprint, is the key metric. In Kanban, lead time is the key metric. This represents the period of time between a new task's appearance in your workflow and its final departure from the system. Next, let's have a look at how teams work in these frameworks. In Scrum, you need a cross-functional team to achieve your goals in a sprint. In Kanban, cross-functional teams are optional, but specialized teams that focus on particular aspects of the workflow are required. Now, let's talk about new additions. In Scrum, just like handling changes, you can't add any items between a sprint or an iteration. In Kanban, new items can be added to the board as long as there's capacity available for it. Now, let's have a look at the job roles within these frameworks. Scrum has 3 major job roles: Product Owner, Scrum Master, and Scrum Team. With Kanban, you don't have any specific job roles. Now, let's talk about representation. Or moreover, let's talk about how data can be represented. With Scrum, the board needs to be reset once a particular sprint is complete. With Kanban, the board stays persistent throughout the entirety of the project. And finally, let's have a look at project length. With Scrum, it's better suited for longer projects. And with Kanban, projects that can be completed in a shorter period of time are better. So which one should you choose? Now, selecting from these 2 methods is mainly based on the requirements of the team. Do you expect your project to be shorter? Do you want to make changes at any time? You don't want to set up job-specific roles? Then Kanban is the framework for you. Or do you want a long-running project with different job roles and involving cross-functional teams? Scrum is the answer for you. Based on the differences we discussed in the last topic, you can make an informed decision. Now, let's have a look at some of the popular companies around the world that employ both these frameworks. Some of the companies that have successfully implemented Scrum are Facebook, General Electronics, and Adobe. Companies that have implemented Kanban are Siemens, BBC, and SAP.
Today, we will learn how to become a certified Scrum Master. So without further ado, let's get started. So here we have 2 people. Let's call them Jim and Pam. Here we see Jim introducing himself to Pam and the team as their new Scrum Master. Pam is now expressing interest in becoming a Scrum Master herself and is asking for some guidance from Jim. Happy to help, Jim starts. First, let's talk about Scrum. What exactly is it? Scrum is an extremely popular agile framework which enables teams to work together while working on a complex project or a product. Scrum helps teams to self-organize, to learn from their experiences, and to reflect on their victories and losses for improvement. Although commonly used in software development, the concept of Scrum can be applied to any kind of team. It's basically a collection of meetings, tools, and roles that help the team structure and manage their work. Let's talk about some advantages of Scrum. First of all, it improves the quality of product development. With Scrum, you are able to develop complex products in less complicated process. Teams are able to constantly make improvements to their product thanks to the input and feedback from their customers. Next, it provides faster delivery of projects. Now, this can be an extension of previous point. Thanks to the real-time updates from stakeholders or end users, the team is able to immediately address the changes. This enables the project to be delivered at a faster pace. Then, Scrum gives you a high return on investment or ROI. Scrum enables you to deliver projects with decreased time to market thanks to the results being delivered early. It gives stakeholders to further reinvest. It also proves the worthiness of the project to the stakeholders who are interested. Next, Scrum enables self-sufficiency and creativity. It enables team members to be creative with problem solving and to take a hands-on approach to the project. And since decisions are taken by each member of the team, they make sure of their own self-sufficiency. And finally, it improves customer satisfaction. Thanks to the constant involvement with each phase of the project, with feedback and interactions, the final product is more likely to be in a form that they'll appreciate. Next, let's talk about the role of a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is an individual who promotes and supports the usage of Scrum practices in the team and the organization. Scrum Masters have a high-level view of the project and help team members perform their tasks better without having to deal with obstacles and distractions. A Scrum Master helps the team understand the theory, rules, and values of Scrum. Considering there are many moving parts in a project, the Scrum Master enables the business, the product owner, the Scrum team, and other individuals to work together in harmony. Now, let us talk about the responsibilities of a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master ensures that the product owner and development team follow Scrum values, principles, and practices. This can help team work effectively and provide high-quality results. The Scrum Master also ensures the team's productivity isn't affected by any blockades. If the problem can be solved by the team members on their own, the Scrum Master helps. The Scrum Master accesses different blockades and prioritizes solving each one of them. The Scrum Master also protects the team from any distraction and any external interference to make sure that they are able to deliver value at the end of each and every sprint. A Scrum Master ensures that the team isn't involved in any irrelevant discussions and focuses on the sprint's requirements. The Scrum Master also has different roles to play with specific components of the Scrum process, like the product owner, the Scrum team, and the organization. Now, let's have a look on the Scrum Master's responsibilities to the product owner. The Scrum Master makes sure the goals, scope, and product domain are understood by everyone in the team. The Scrum Master needs to find a way to effectively manage the product backlog. This helps the Scrum team understand why their product backlog needs to be clear and concise. The Scrum Master needs to ensure the product backlog is arranged properly and to facilitate Scrum events like sprint retrospectives, sprint planning, sessions, daily Scrum events. Now, let's have a look at how a Scrum Master is responsible to the Scrum team. To develop the team to self-organize and to enable cross-functionality with teams, to help the team create products of high value, to remove roadblocks that the team may encounter. The Scrum team needs to facilitate Scrum events like they are required. Now moving ahead, the Scrum Master helps the organization to lead and coach its adoption for Scrum. The Scrum Master helps to plan the implementation of Scrum. The Scrum Master needs to help the employees as well as stakeholders. The Scrum Master helps to understand how Scrum helps to increase the value produced. And finally, the Scrum Master helps to make changes that increase the Scrum team's productivity and more. Now, let's talk about how can you become a Scrum Master. First, you need to have a strong understanding of Scrum and Agile concepts. As a Scrum Master, you need to ensure that your team follows the principles of Agile and Scrum. You need to have a clear understanding of different teams and phases within Scrum to ensure you can understand and teach the usage of framework to the organization properly. In short, having a detailed understanding of the systems and terminologies is mandatory. A Scrum certification can also greatly help with this. More on that in a little bit. You need fine-tuned organizational skills. You need to be able to structure the team and plan out their actions to ensure everything stays organized. And to make sure everything stays on track, you need the ability to plan things out. You should be able to ensure that the team stays on schedule and all the tasks are completed successfully. You could also use online project management systems like Monday.com, Nutcase, and SAM 9000 to keep things organized. You need to be familiar with the technology the team uses. You need to ensure that the team is able to complete their project in a timely manner. This can be done if you have an understanding of different technical terms and processes that the team is involved with. Hence, some technical familiarity and training is really important. You also need to have the ability to coach and teach the team to follow Scrum properly. For teams that are new to the Scrum methodology, your ability to teach them the different concepts, terms, and principles play a very important role in the future success of the team. You need to be able to tell the team not only what it needs to be done, but also how and why. You also need to be able to encourage the team members to work together and improve themselves. You may also need to work with individual team members to maximize their potential. You need to have the ability to handle conflicts and resolve them quickly. Considering how teams are filled with people with different personalities, ideas, and working styles, it is only likely that they may clash with each other every now and then. If disagreement cannot be handled among themselves, you need to be able to figure things out. If left unsolved, this could inhibit the entire team's progress. So you must be able to negotiate and resolve the conflict in a way that satisfies everyone. And finally, you must be a servant leader. A servant leader puts the needs of the team before their own and helps each member to perform the best of their capabilities. You need to be both a leader and the team member. You need to be the part of your team while making sure they can successfully fulfill their requirements. Now, let's talk about certifications. To become a Scrum Master, and a certified one at that, one of the most important things you can do is to get through the Certified Scrum Master test. This test tests your understanding of different principles and processes that are the part of Scrum process. Moreover, to take this test, you need to have completed an in-person or an online course taught by a certified Scrum trainer or certified Agile coach. You'll also need to have at least 14 hours of face-to-face interaction with the aforementioned trainer or a coach. Let's get to the exam. The exam is of 1 hour and it has 50 questions in it, and you need to score at least 37 to pass the exam. The exam costs around $29 to $30 and you have 2 attempts to clear. After 90 days or 2 attempts, you'll need to pay $25 to write the exam again. Once you are certified, you'll need to recertify yourself by taking an exam again after 2 years. Now, let's talk about the salary of a Scrum Master. According to Glassdoor, the United States of America, a Scrum Master earns approximately $97,000 per annum. Meanwhile, in India, a Scrum Master can earn up to 14 lakh rupees per annum. Hyped up about becoming a Scrum Master yet? Let me now tell you about how Simplilearn can help. Simplilearn offers the Certified Scrum Master Certification Training course. So in Simplilearn Certified Scrum Master Certification, we will be providing you with Scrum and Agile methodologies, importance of Agile, Scrum lifecycle, Scrum terminologies, roles involved in Scrum, and much more. So take your first step to getting certified and getting ahead in your career by clicking on the top right corner and enrolling with Simplilearn.
And with that, we have come to the end of this full course video on Agile and Scrum. I hope it was informative and interesting. If you have any questions related to the topics covered in this video, please ask away in the comment section below. Our team will help you solve your queries at the earliest. Thanks for watching, stay safe and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.